Do you ever feel like you don't belong? Sometimes maybe you're older or younger than the group and you just don't know how to fit in. All right, ladies, this is the final call. This week is the free webinar on the 7 key factors on how to take back control of your time and your parenting. Head on over to momisincontrol.com/join. This is practical strategy on how to feel in alignment with who you want to be in the world, how you show up as a mother, as a wife, as a sister, as a boss, employee, whoever you are. It's possible, and there is a strategy to making it happen. But if you don't register, you won't know. I'm not sharing this information anywhere else. So head on over to momisincontrol.com/join. Okay, ladies, I'm back, and today I'm really excited to share my conversation with you with Diane Sorensen. Diane is a client of mine, and what I love about this woman is her perseverance to continue her personal development journey. She's 55 years old, average middle-aged woman who decided to take a stand for how she wanted to feel. Jumping into the Mamas in Control community, her first question to me was, or first statement perhaps was, "My children are all grown up. I'm no longer mothering." But the truth is, it doesn't matter if you have a toddler or your kids are 30 or 40 or 60, you will always be a caregiver, a nurturer. And she said, "I wish I had you when my kids were younger." But during the interview, she talked about the fact that, you know what, when I was your age, Heather, I wouldn't have been open or ready to receiving this information. So the reason why I wanted to talk with Diane today and share her brilliance and amazing spirit with you all is because, one, I want you to know you're not alone. Two, I want you to know you can jump into this at any point in the game, and 55 is definitely not too late. That is totally a self-sabotage belief that women carry of like, oh, you know, I missed the boat on this. Heck no. If your lungs are still working, if your heart is still beating, you have time left to dive in and figure out, who are you? Who do you want to be when you grow older? What brings you joy? How do you want to feel? It doesn't matter if you have 5 decades left or if you have 5 weeks left to live. You still have life left to live within you. So show up and figure it out. This conversation also opened up a deeper conversation around Brené Brown's work with belonging. And Diane says it so beautifully, and she talks about belonging and engagement and disengagement, which she really found a huge aha moment in her own personal life and her parenting and especially her work. So being towards the end of her career is when she's actually starting to find herself in her career and is cracking her open to her deepest potential. So I'm really excited to share today's conversation with you, with Diane, and I hope you gain something from it. And if you do, send me a message on Instagram at @mamasincontrol or send it to support@heatherchauvin.com, and I will personally share it with Diane. I think it's really important that you know you're not alone, and also that sometimes we are getting in our own way. We are cultivating and creating our own drama, and we're making our lives so much more difficult than they actually need to be. So let's dive into Diane's story, and I'm excited to hear your thoughts.
Okay.
Awesome. Okay, welcome, Diane.
Thank you.
You made it. You're here. You're alive.
I am here.
Quite the journey to get here.
It is, yes. And I'm not just alive, I'm thriving.
That's good. How long have we known each other now? When did we start working together?
The end of August. So it's been about 8 months.
Wow. A crazy 8 months.
Crazy 8 months. It's been a roller coaster.
So I asked you, I said, I want to interview you. And what was the first response in your head when I said, I want to interview you?
I was like, what? What does she mean? Why would she want to interview me?
I always tell you every time we talk that you inspire me, because not because of your age. How old are you, Diane? Let's declare to the world your wisdom.
I'm 55.
Okay.
And actually, my birthday's tomorrow, so I'll be 56 tomorrow.
Happy birthday.
Thank you.
What a beautiful birthday present to give yourself. Just keep doing shit that makes you want to poop your pants.
Yeah, exactly.
I do that to you a lot, don't I?
You do.
Yeah.
Yes.
So the reason why I wanted to talk to you, like I said, is because you inspire me. But I get so many emails from women from all walks of life saying, I wish I had you in my life, Heather, when my children were younger. My children are older now. I've already done the damage and, I'm about to retire, or I'm, in this life cycle or season. So it's kind of like they've just given up hope. Like, oh, I'm done. And what I love about you is, one, I think you were attracted to me because of the industry that you work in, because you talk a lot about conscious discipline and parenting and the mindfulness when it comes to children. And we'll get a little bit into that. But there's always those pain points in our lives and those struggles that crack us open to even more potential and possibility. And I've just seen you grow so much in the last 8 months, that it's like you can teach an old dog new tricks. That personal development is for everyone.
It is, yeah. And it's never too late. And I know we kind of get in that mindset when we get as a certain age that, if I only knew that when I was younger, if that's only happened when I was younger. But to be perfectly honest, when I started, you mentioned conscious discipline, I started that work a while back. And I, at first, I was in that mindset too of, I wish I would have known this when I was younger or when my kids were younger. But to be honest, when I really think about that, I'm not sure that I would have been ready to take that message at that time. If it was presented to me at that time, I think certain things had to happen in my life to really get me to the place where I was ready to receive new information and ready to practice new information. And through that, I kind of learned that it is never too late. You can rewire your brain at any age and change the trajectory of your life. It changes all of your relationships, and really the path of my life. And I went as far as I could on my own. And then I knew I needed to dig deeper. And that's when I found you. And that's one of the biggest things I've learned in working with you, that you can't go this personal development stuff alone. You need more people. And I thought I just needed you. It would be just you and I. And I've learned that, you do need a community. And that was one of the biggest things I've learned.
It's so funny you say that, because when I discovered community, that was a game changer for me. And I didn't know that I needed it until I received it. And it was from being in a group setting. And I remember saying to one of the mentors that I had, if I didn't invest in this program, because it was a mastermind type, there was other women, I wouldn't be where I am today. Like, I didn't know what I was missing. And on the other side of that, I see so many women repel it, like push it away. And because they don't know the value in it, right? I'm like, I'm still here, you can talk to me, we can do this, but you can't be codependent on only me. And then I'm like, oh, you need to connect with this person. And they're like, nope. Like, they're just not feeling it. I'm like, this is where we're so wounded as women when it comes to connection and collaboration. And it's essential to our survival, but yet so many people have a really hard time cultivating that connection, because it's a very vulnerable thing to do. So what has your experience been with that?
Yeah, I think we put on armor. We protect ourselves, and showing up and being seen is really scary. my experience as a child, that the messages that I got growing up was, it didn't matter who I was, it mattered how I presented myself. So in other words, it was really important to fit in. And if you're familiar with Brene Brown's work, she talks about fitting in and belonging, and how belonging is our innate desire to be connected with other people, because we're hardwired to connect as human beings. And so fitting in is a barrier to belonging, because fitting in is about, who do I have to become to be accepted in this group? And then over here, who do I have to become to be connected or to be accepted in this group? And it's about putting on social masks. So belonging is truly being seen. And that, I think, is difficult for a lot of us, because we have armored ourselves up to feel safe. And so I don't think what we realize, though, is that in the long run, in the short run, it helps us feel safe. In the long run, we're isolated, and we end up, it's hurtful in the long run. So no matter what your age is, to figure all this out, it doesn't matter. And I, too, Heather, was in that mindset of, I should have this figured out by now. And when I went to the first retreat, and I didn't go because I was like, ooh, a retreat, yay.
I'm like, Diane, you should be there.
Yeah, the information came out, and I didn't even think about it twice. I was like, nope. And so when you ask, you going to the retreat? And I'm like, no. And you're like, why not? Well, first of all, always the money stuff comes up. And you're like, well, we can have a conversation about that. What else? Well, I have to take time off work. And you're like, so? And, there was this silence, and I'm like, yeah, I guess. So what? It's like I have a ton of vacation time, and I don't take it because, I don't know why. That's just what we do. Mm-hmm. So, anyway, coming to the retreat. So then I was like, okay, I'm going to do this. I did all the prep work, got myself there. And all of a sudden it was like, ugh, oh my gosh, these women are young, quite young. And they're like the age of my children. And I thought, oh my gosh, I don't belong here. I should have had all this figured out when I was their age, or started figuring out when I was their age. And what I realized is, again, it doesn't matter what your age is. This is your journey. And it's not their journey, is it my journey? This is my journey. Everybody has their own journey. And some people fall into it at a younger age. Some people fall into it at an older age. It doesn't matter, as long as you become aware of it and take the journey. So I am making a difference in my children's lives, even though they are adults. I mean, it's making a huge impact on a relationship to be able to show up with them in a way that we can truly connect.
Mm-hmm. What I find interesting is that we consider in your 50s or 60s to be like outdated. I don't understand why society does that, because, it doesn't matter if you live to be 100 years old and then you come to something awareness at 90 or 95. It's every day. I always think to myself, like, I can't go back. I don't know how people live not living, right? Where we're just existing and we're just going to work to pay the bills and just convincing yourself like, well, this is what it is. And it's like, but that to me feels awful. Like it was terrible. And I just don't, not that I don't understand it. I'm just like, guys, like there's magic over here, right? Like come over here, come learn and discover. And people are like, no. So what do you think is really happening? And then I want to get into more of like what you do professionally, but what do you think is happening when people are refusing to look at the magic? Like, refusing to get uncomfortable, refusing to take opportunities. Not everyone would say yes to a retreat when they felt they didn't belong there, right? When all their crap was coming up. So what do you think makes somebody say yes when someone else just refuses?
Well, I think, like you said, of the aging thing, part of it is societal's messages that, we always have to be young. We always have to look young. And as you get to a certain age, then your life is done. But, yes, we age on the outside, but actually on the inside, we are ageless. We are timeless. We are timeless. So this is the work on the inside. And so working on what you want to feel is timeless. It's ageless. Having joy at 55 is amazing, just as if I were at 22. I mean, it doesn't matter what age you are. You can feel these wonderful, amazing things, and you can see the world as amazing. I think what makes some people say yes and others resist is that willingness to take risk. And rather than keeping the armor on and saying, no, I'm not taking any off, I need to protect myself, somebody else saying, I'm going to take a risk and take off a piece of it and see what happens. And then there's a little bit of magic that happens. And then it motivates you maybe to take off another piece, and then another piece, and another piece. And so that's what has happened with me. I think I got to a point in my life where things sometimes, you have to be brought to your knees before you're willing to take that risk. Because if you don't take the risk, you're dying.
When you said that, I was like, you have to be brought to your knees before you're willing to stand up.
Yeah.
And it just goes back to taking a stand for yourself and taking a stand for the life that you want to be living and how you want to feel. There's so much magic in that. I don't know why I never used to use the word magic or miracles. And I'm like, this is it. It's when you go through the discomfort. And when you just show up every single day. Like this morning, I'm like, you're going to get up, you're going to do your morning routine, and you're going to do this. You want to do the opposite, but you're going to do this. And it's not that you're pushing yourself and you're hustling and you're taking a stand for your life, for your soul, for the joy that we want to experience in our lives.
Can I share something? You said a miracle, and I really think I had a miracle happen to me recently. Can I share that?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. So, I'm still, this personal development stuff is, layer by layer by layer. And I was reading a Brene Brown book, Daring Greatly. And I've read it before, but I decided I was going to read it again and kind of absorb what was in there. And this time I came upon the word disengagement. And Brene talked about disengagement as being the ultimate betrayal. And at first I'm like, well, that's weird. Why would that be the ultimate betrayal? So I kept reading, and she talked about, how we think of the ultimate betrayal as, your spouse has cheated on you or left you for somebody younger or whatever, a divorce, something like that. But actually, she said those are big betrayals. But disengagement means that the other person is not caring anymore. It's letting the connection go, and being unwilling to devote the time and effort into that relationship. And that engagement, of course, then was the opposite. It was about caring. It was about building connections, and willing to devote the time and effort to the relationship. And I have been working, as you know, on connection. That's been always really difficult for me. And, I've been, it's all about connection, 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 working on this. And all of a sudden, the word engagement just hit me like a ton of bricks. It was like, oh, I actually have to engage with people to make that connection. So it was actually going farther back than making a connection. It was, you have to engage first. And to engage, you have to get out of your head. So it kind of brought me to my knees, because it was one of those bringing me to my knees moments, because I realized growing up, the hurt inside me was the disengagement. And that's a whole nother story. But, and then I realized, oh, I repeated those same patterns in my own life with my own kids. And that's where the issue is with those relationships. And so then I thought, oh, crap. So to get to my desired core feelings, I have to engage with people, truly engage, which was really scary for me, because that means, okay, I've got to take off a big piece of this armor, put it down, and go engage. Shoot.
And you could no longer hide behind your age or technology. Right. Like, oh, I don't understand technology. Oh, I don't like Facebook groups. Oh, I don't know this person. Oh, I'm not qualified to do that. Like all of the things, all the pieces of the armor that we tell ourselves of why we can't do something. It's actually there to protect you.
Yeah. So I decided, I made a commitment that I was going to engage that last week. And so I did. I engaged, in my professional life. I engaged in my personal life. And it was like a miracle. It was like, oh my gosh, this was fun. This was awesome. I feel joy. I feel alive. I feel authentic. I feel connected. Why is this so hard for me then? And then I realized, oh, maybe it's not the engagement that's hard. Maybe it's the disengagement that has making life hard. Because of what you avoid, that anxiety just grows bigger. So the anxiety of engaging grew and grew and grew and grew every time I avoided it. So yeah, that was the miracle moment. And guess what? My anxiety disappeared. Wow. It was gone.
So it's almost like, just to rephrase, so if someone's listening and they're like, I don't understand, because I also, anxiety is one of those things that culturally it's diagnosed and nobody else talks about it any other way, right? Like, I have anxiety. It's like, okay, great. But I always talk about, like, what is your anxiety here to teach you, right? Like, why is it present in your body? Well, what do you mean? I just have anxiety. No, you're not an anxious person. Something happened to you. Something's out of alignment. Like, and it's not just going to go away in a day. Like you said, Diane, like you have to dig and dig and dig. And you're like, oh, I know why it has presented itself in my life, right? That will be different for other people. So disengagement, can I say disengagement and disconnection are the same thing? Like, okay. So feeling disconnected or disengaged. So this is interesting too, because you talk about engagement and connection with your children, where a lot of people, for some reason, mentally, it's like parenting is this weird relationship that just doesn't account for anything else. Like, it's like this little box of like parenting, and you have to become this different person. No, you need to learn the life skills of how to engage with your children, how to connect with your children. But if you are disengaged in your relationships in general in life, like that is the armor that you wear, you're not going to feel that engagement or connection in your parenting.
Right. Absolutely.
So can you give me an example of what maybe in your personal relationships? And then I do want to talk about your professional, because I think that's a unique story as well. But in your personal relationships, like a specific example of what engagement looks like now today.
Okay. So I went to a meeting last Monday evening, and I showed up there and I truly engaged. I talked with people. I was listening to what they were saying. And the difference was I was seeing them and I was listening to them. And I just gave feedback out of my heart. I had to speak at this meeting and tell them about my professional position. I didn't prepare anything ahead of time. I just talked about it. The old me, before I understood engagement, would have been there, but I would have been all in my head. Whenever I talk to people, I'd be in my head about, the way I'm presenting myself, how I look, how I act, how I move my body, my facial expressions. As they talk, I'm thinking about how I'm going to respond. So I am completely in my head, not really listening to them. I get bits and pieces. And so last Monday night when I engaged with them, it was completely different. I wasn't in my head at all. And I felt like I was there with them. I don't know if that makes any sense.
I heard you say that
I was in the room instead of in my head.
Yeah, I heard you say that you were being of service to the other people. Mm-hmm. And it's like, oh, okay, what are you struggling with? Right? Like I hear this from people so often, like in my business and this, and I'm like, all you have to do is serve people and not from a place of ego. Like, how can I help you today? Oh, I'm looking, do you know where I can get some organic apples? Oh my God, yeah, this market has the best organic apples, rather than me just talking about whatever the heck I want to talk about. It's actually caring about the other person, and it has nothing to do with ourselves.
Yes, engagement shows that you care.
Right.
Yeah. And I have to say, Heather, it was easy.
Yeah.
And so when you talk about, life doesn't have to be all so hard, I'm like, oh, this is the ease that Heather's talking about.
So do you think, so when you think about your anxiety, do you think, like you said, I like what you just said about like well, you didn't say these exact words, but it was like what you resist will persist and grow bigger. So
yeah.
You were resisting engagement or connection pretty much just because you were taught how to disengage. Like disengagement was your comfort zone. It was your go-to. It's just what you grew up knowing.
Right.
So now that you discovered, everyone, we're hardwired for connection. Oh, I'm actually good at this, but it's something that you just have to make a conscious effort to do because your default is to disengage. So the second you kind of plugged back in and engaged and connected with other people, your anxiety just lessened.
It just went away. Yeah. Yeah. So I really, truly think if we avoid what we're afraid of, it will grow. And that anxiety will grow.
Didn't I say that to you before? I'm kidding. I'm just kidding.
Maybe.
I'm always like, what are you guys afraid of? And I'm terrified of this. Great. That's what we're going to do.
Do it. Right.
And then they're like, what?
Right.
And I'm like, no, because you resisted it. It's like armor or something.
Right. But so if you take the risk and do what you fear, and it is scary, it's hard, but on the other side of that is the miracle. That is where the joy is, the aliveness, the living. That is where the magic is, on the other side of that.
I'm getting excited. I love this stuff because it's actually, I find, very easy to disengage in your life. It's a number. It's a numbing agent.
Right. It is. Yeah.
Like, oh, I'm just going to scroll. I'm just going to go to bed early. Well, I like going to bed early, but if you're doing it to avoid something, oh, I'm not going to go to that function. I'm not going to do that. So what do you think people think risk, because we're using that word a lot. Like someone will say to me, I'm not a risk taker. And I'm like, you don't need to sell your house and, go gamble everything away. That's not risk. Like, how can you
Right.
take little risks on every day?
That's funny that you say people say they're not risk takers, because that's how I would have categorized myself. I don't take risk. I play it safe. Um, but being 55 and playing it safe all my life, it was killing me. I was dying inside. And that's why I say it doesn't matter what age you are. Don't just lay down and die. You have a long time to live yet. Live it. I'm sorry, I forgot what your question was, Heather.
Well, no, it was kind of like, how do you take risks every day? But you, like you said, you identified as a non-risk taker.
Right.
So what do you do now to take risks?
So I think showing up every day at my work is a risk. I just recently went through
I love your
job change.
It's a risk to show up at work. So talk about the job change and how that was risky for you.
Okay, so I was a teacher in a Head Start program for 20 years, and also a mother of 3. And I struggled with behaviors with my own children, and I struggled with behaviors in the classroom. And they were just, there were starting to be more and more behaviors showing up in the classroom. And one day, this program called Conscious Discipline found me, and I started learning a new way to show up in my relationships with children. It was written specifically for teachers and also parents. So I did it so I could control the kids in my classroom, because I really was a controller. And I realized that I needed, through the skills I learned with Conscious Discipline, I started teaching in my classroom in a different way. I started building relationships with the children and then helping the children build relationships with each other. And it grew just a classroom of trust and belonging and connection.
Wait a minute.
I know.
You started to engage with these children and create connection.
Yeah. And so what happened was, my supervisor would come in and do her, observations a couple of times a year or whatever. And she started seeing the change. And so she started telling other people in the administration building, you got to go see this classroom. It's really different. So they did. They would be like, oh, I'm sure it's not that different. So they'd come in and then they'd go tell somebody else, oh, yeah, you can feel the difference. And that was the difference, that it wasn't what they were hearing and seeing as much as how it felt. They felt that it was just a more compassionate place to be. So anyway, fast forward, a new position was created in our agency of behavior specialists because of the many, many behaviors we're seeing coming in. And I was offered that position. And so I was very excited, ready to grow these skills within our agency. And then I got into position and went, oh, crap. This isn't as easy as I thought. And so I really realized before I was just hiding out in my own little classroom, doing my own thing. And now I was being exposed to the whole agency. And so it was hard because there was also resistance. Not everybody is ready to take that step and see the behaviors from a different perspective. And so I got resistance, which was really scary for me because I like to be liked, So that has when I came to you, Heather, for some help because I knew I needed to dig deeper. My anxiety was so high, thought I was going to come out of my skin, and I knew I couldn't feel like this for 9 months. It would be like holding my breath for 9 months, and then when summer came, letting it out. So I knew that I just couldn't do that. So that's when I came to you, and magic happened.
Awesome. So this is interesting to me. I was just thinking I'm going to make all my kids' teachers listen to this episode. I think teachers have a very difficult job.
Oh,
And it is very easy for a parent to say, they can't handle the classroom. They can't control this. They can't do that. But yet parents, message me and say, I don't understand my one child, right? Let alone like a whole classroom in a system that you don't have control over. So it's about having compassion and empathy for the teachers who are teaching. My kids are like trying to secretly come in the bedroom, and I always do this like swatting, like get out of here, get out of here, where I'm like, guys, don't bug me, and then it's like, okay, let's bug mom. So this is okay. So you're in your classroom, you're creating this connection and engagement, and then Diane goes out into the world and is like, hey guys, now I'm going to teach you what I was doing. And there is this disconnect with, I am the authority, you are the child. I have a voice, you do not. But I want you to use your voice so that you can grow up to be like an independent learner and all of these things. But don't use your voice in my classroom because I need to control this environment. So as a parent who subscribes to conscious discipline and conscious parenting, what is important to me is the relationship that I have with my children. What does that mean? If I want respect from my child, I have to respect my child. What is that? Like, that means so many different things on different levels. It doesn't matter if I have a 2-year-old or a 15-year-old. Respect is, I'm going to talk to the child the same way that I would want them to talk to me. But what happens, the side effect of this, and this is what I'm experiencing now, which really sucks, is you empower your children. Mm-hmm. So there have been many times where I've tried to attempt to raise my voice with my kids, and they will look at me and go, are you having a bad day? Mom, did you work out lately? Have you been eating good? Are you taking care of yourself? And I'm furious. I'm in my red zone, and I'm like, don't. The other day, my son was like, he said something, he's laughing at the kitchen table, and I'm like, stop it, don't act like that at the table. And I'm trying to be all like controlling, and I want it to look perfect, and he's just laughing hysterically. And then he did something, he had like yogurt on his face, and he wouldn't like wipe it, and he's like, what? Was there something on my face? And I just busted out laughing, and then everyone started laughing. So the old me would be like, I'm losing control, and the new me is like, okay, I get it. Like, settle down, mom, but can we just clean this up a little bit? And I can reframe and learn how to respect my child and to see and understand. But what I'm seeing is my children are going out into the world. I'm empowering them at home. They're going out into the world, and now they're considered confrontational. They're considered disrespectful because they're literally using their voice and saying, I see you don't have control of this classroom because you don't have control of yourself, and you're trying to dominate, and that doesn't work for me. And they won't yell and scream and do all of this, but they will say, they will confront the authority, and they don't like that. So It's interesting because I've changed the conversation in my home, but the conversation hasn't changed at school. So my children still feel defeated. And it's like, where do I come into this? So you're experiencing it from the opposite, which is right. You're going into the system and saying, hey, let's change. And they're like, nope. I don't want to, because I have my armor up and I don't want to look at myself. So what does conscious discipline look like in a classroom?
So we talk about, there's 2 ways of being, either hurtful or helpful. And if it's not helpful, then it is hurtful in some way. And so we focus on helpfulness with the belief that what you focus on, you get more of. So much of the time, we're focused on what we don't want kids to do. It's like we go around with a highlighter all day long, highlighting all the stuff that we don't like. And I mean, how would that feel if your boss were going around highlighting all the stuff they didn't like? I mean, you wouldn't learn to do it better. You would learn to be like, oh crap, I'm an idiot. And when you feel bad, you don't make good choices. So that's, we try to cultivate a lot of helpfulness by focusing on helpfulness. And there's really a belief that, you know, there's a framework, like we're going to collectively have these expectations. These are clear and they are expected to be followed. And then there's also an element of, but what works for one child doesn't necessarily work for another. So there's also individualizing that, and each person gets what they need. Fairness in my classroom would not look the same for everybody, because fairness isn't everybody gets the same thing. Fairness is everybody gets what they need. And children can learn that, oh, they're having this because that's what they need. And when I need something, I can trust that I'm going to get what I need too in that moment. So they really do. Children are very compassionate. If we just trust them enough to let go of some of our control. And I have to say too, I was very controlling. And so I really went clear over on the other side, and tried out permissiveness for a while, because really you don't know where that middle ground is until you've experienced both sides. So it is a practice. It's not something you go, okay, I'm going to do this and this and this. Let's check all these off. It's a practice. And it really looked different in my class every year because there were different children every year. So
I always say I'm just managing energy. That's all I'm doing. Like in my home, it doesn't, if I insert one other child's, like you're just managing energies.
Right. And the other thing I would say that's huge is teaching ourselves and then others, children, how to have their feelings and regulate them. Because as a society, we really don't feel our feelings very well. We want to avoid them because they're uncomfortable. And so it really was it was about sitting in the discomfort of feeling my feelings, and allowing children to feel their feelings instead of stopping it or avoiding it. Because children cannot learn to regulate their feelings unless they have them. And so sometimes they got worse before they got better, because then they're like, whoa, I'm having these feelings and you're allowing me to have them. Let's experiment with this. And that was okay. So I always laugh that I'm in this position because I grew up with conflict is not an option. We don't do conflict. So I avoided conflict at all costs. I don't like conflict. And before conscious discipline, I would spend a huge amount of time organizing activities and making sure I had everything exactly so, because I thought the more I organized, the less conflict I would have. And what conscious discipline taught me was you're always going to have conflict. And we need to teach children how to move through conflict, because if we don't, then when they get to be adults, how are they going to know how to deal with conflict? So Dr. Becky Bailey always says, who's the creator of conscious discipline, she always says, conflict is an opportunity to teach a skill. And I was like, oh, really? We have to have conflict to be able to do this. But yeah, you want young children to have those opportunities to figure out how to get through a conflict and solve problems, so that when they are, say, preteens, teens, they have the ability to solve problems such as peer pressure, relationships, all of that kind of stuff. So yeah, that made all the difference.
You know what I find working with parents is we get in this perfectionist mode of like, I'm screwing up my children, right?
Yeah.
And most of us, I think now the next generation is trying to, that are into personal development and emotional intelligence, will look at that and be like, okay, we got to feel our feelings. And they have swung to one pendulum or the other. Like, I never say no to my child. My child gets whatever they want. So there is this happy medium, and people always ask like, well, what is that? What is that? And to me, it all comes back to trust. Like, you truly have to trust yourself, because what works for my children won't work for everybody else's children. What works for one of my children definitely won't work for the other one. And it needs to feel in alignment, right? So I don't want to be sitting there screaming all day, but I also don't want to feel like a doormat and like everybody's walking all over me. So we need, and it's okay if I have a boundary of something and someone else is like, oh, that's a non-issue for me. That's okay. Like, we can all have different boundaries, different rules, different values. We need to honor and respect how we want to feel and how we want to move into the world. Right. So I know in our home, we have pretty strict like screen time regulation. And as my kids are getting older, they're like, come on, mom, like other people, they're strict on this. And I'm like, I'm sorry. It's just a thing. You're never going to be able to like debate with me. Like, it's just not happening in this house, because I see the slippery slope of it, and it's just not going to happen. And I really want to get you uncomfortable so that you can have that creative space to read or write or do like the basic human needs that people are forgetting about now. But I see so many people questioning themselves of like, my child's angry. Does that mean I did something wrong? What do I do? Oh, he can't self-regulate. She can't self-regulate. Oh, they called me a bitch. They said I was mean. Is that wrong? And I'm like, it's not right or wrong. Like, we're just over analyzing now. Am I doing this right?
Yeah. And I was big too on questioning myself too. So when we're talking about building those relationships with our children, it really does start with building a relationship with myself. And that's not something I ever learned. And I don't know if other people have learned that. But people kind of look at me strange when I, say it starts with, you have to have a relationship with yourself. You have to learn to trust yourself and be compassionate with yourself before you can do that with your children, and set boundaries with yourself so that you can set boundaries with children. And so, that's something I still work on, is setting those boundaries with myself. And again, it's almost an unlearning of what we've been conditioned to in the past, and being willing to practice a new way. And it's a practice. It is not going to be perfect. And you always say, Heather, progress, not perfection. And I find myself saying that a lot now, because that is so true. And I used to call myself a perfectionist. I'm not even doing that anymore. I say I am a person who has perfectionist tendencies that I am working on. So yeah, and we're going to screw up, and that's just the way it is. And we always want, I don't want my children to make the same mistakes I made. Well, guess what? They're not going to make your mistakes. They're going to make their own mistakes, and that's part of their journey. And so, going back to being a little bit older in this community has really been helpful for me, because I have learned a lot from the other women who are around my children's age, what they would want from their mother. And that's been really helpful for me. And I think it's been helpful for them to see it from a mother, from like a mother's perspective, and going, oh, my mom probably has a lot of her own stuff.
Yeah, because we see our parents as perfect, like perfectly imperfect, right? It's like we put them on a pedestal, and then yet, there's so much judgment for their imperfections, but we're not labeling them as imperfections. We're just judging them for it. And it's like, it's true. typically it's just a projection of our wound, right? Of something that we haven't healed. And I think this circles back to the conversation when you were talking about engagement, right? Because you said, well, what was the difference? And you were engaging with the other person rather than making it all about yourself. And it's the same thing in our lives. If I can be in the presence of my mother or my father and not just be chronically triggered because it's like, oh, you did this, you'd never do this. And just engage with that person and see them for who they really are. A person, not my mother, not my father, a person with wounds who's imperfect, and shift it to loving compassion. That has been probably one of the most challenging things I've ever done, right? Like we're recording this after a holiday, and all weekend I was triggered, just like everyone probably is around the holidays when you have to hang out with family. But I kept asking, I could see the armor going up. I could see it like literally, oh, I got to go to this person's house for dinner. Psh, psh, armor up, armor up. And I'm like, why? And so being in their presence, talk about taking a risk. That's exactly what it is. Risk taking, like, and opening that armor a little bit.
Right. And just, it was such a change for me when I stopped thinking about what they're thinking. Because here's the deal too, and Dr. Bailey would say this, that we don't know what people are thinking. We think we know what people are thinking, but honestly, realistically, we are not in their head. So she says, we just make it up. And so if we're going to make it up, why not make it up positive? But when I let go of what I thought they were thinking about me, it was just such a shift.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It's funny when you say that. I was watching that Brene Brown on Netflix. She has and she was talking about the story, which I think I've heard her talk about before. She was in the lake with her husband, and she was trying to create connection. And she was like, oh, I was really connected to him. And then I'm like, honey, like, it was so great to be here with you. And he was like, yeah. And he kept going. And she created the story in her mind that they were going to get a divorce or something, like worst case scenario. And it turns out he was like, I was fighting off a panic attack. Like I had a bad dream last night that something awful was going to happen to us in this lake. And I just wanted to be prepared. So I was kind of in fight or flight mode. And she was like, oh my God, I didn't know. But again, when you engage and you have those uncomfortable conversations, you can really learn and see where the other people are at. And whether that is you are a teacher and a child is struggling in your classroom, having that uncomfortable conversation with the child and engaging rather than go to the principal's office, or with your own children. Like, hey, I screamed earlier today. I am so sorry. And I need to stop. I need to work on myself to stop doing that. What was really going on earlier? Like, let's have that conversation and no judgment. I'm going to put duct tape over my mouth. You can say anything you want to me. I just want to hear you.
Right.
And I think it's really important that, there is no perfection here. This is the thing. You've tried to make everything look perfect, and now you're learning a new way. And the new way is all about messy imperfection. That is going to screw up your brain.
Right. Yeah. And you said something about judgment, and this work is so much making the shift from noticing, from judgment to noticing. We just are such a judgmental society. We judge, and so we assume that other people are judging us. And so if we can just let go of that judgment and just see people for people, because everybody has a struggle. We often think, well, it's just me. No, everybody has a struggle. So yeah, letting go of judgment, just noticing.
Well, I gave someone a compliment. Have you ever tried to give a woman a compliment? Like,
yeah, and they push it away.
Yeah. So I gave someone a compliment the other day, and the first thing they did was they took out their phone and they were like, because I said, oh my God, you have like a nice glow. And she was like, I just got a spray tan. Does it look orange? Can you tell? And so she got out her phone and was looking. And I literally said this to her. I said, shut the fuck up and receive my compliment.
Yeah.
And she was like, what? I said, look at how you are repelling this. You won't receive it. I said, I think I'm giving you a compliment. I'm not saying it because I think you look orange and I'm trying to make you feel like shit about yourself. I'm like, oh, it looks like, because honestly, I'm like, did you come back from vacation? It looks like you have a nice little glow. So nor is she staring at me and my self-consciousness of like the wrinkle that goes in the middle of my forehead, right? Nobody's actually looking at you because they're too busy staring at themselves. And it's just hilarious when you come to realize that the way people see you are completely different than the way you see yourself, because you're constantly looking at the imperfections. So,
right. My husband always tells me that, because I can be really hard on myself, and he'll say, I wish you could see you through my eyes. And I think that's so true. If people could see themselves through our eyes, it would be so different.
Yeah. The world would be, I don't want to say a better place, because I think people say that too much. It would feel lighter. That's for sure.
It would. Yeah.
So Diane, we could talk for hours and hours, and I just wanted to say thank you again for saying yes to this opportunity when you were like, what the heck are you getting me into now, Heather?
Well, you have helped me say yes to a lot of things that I normally would say no to. So I thank you, Heather, for believing in me and inviting me.
I think there's so much power in story, and we all have so many stories that we can tell. And I think that's where engagement is. It's about engagement and connection and just speaking your truth. And if someone gets a little golden nugget from that, and that changes their life, then we've made a difference. So thank you for sharing yourself.
You're welcome. Thank you, Heather.
What do you say to that woman who's listening to you, and she can be in her 20s, she can be in her 80s, and she's just like, I am not a risk taker? Like, what do you say to this woman who's like, I don't know where to start, it just feels so overwhelming?
Probably I would say start where you started me, Heather, in how do you want to feel? And then how do you feel that way? What action do you need to take to feel that way? And rather than labeling yourself as I'm not a risk taker, just take that off the table. Just say, I'm Diane, and this is how I want to feel, and here's one step I can take towards that. That was a game changer for me, taking action. I could read all the books in the world, but if I didn't take action on anything, nothing was going to change. So that's what I would say. Whether you're 20 or 80 or 40, think about how you want to feel, and then what's one step you can take towards that.
Perfect. Thank you.
Thank you.
Are you secretly hoping your child does as you say and not as you do? Well, guess what? I've teamed up with Big Life Journal to help give your children the tools and strategies they need to live their big life. Their growth mindset journals empower children to face challenges head on, think positive, and embrace mistakes. You can also check out their printables and growth mindset activity cards. It doesn't matter if your child is a toddler or entering high school. Discover how to live in a growth mindset is a lifelong skill we all can learn about. Head on over to momisincontrol.com/big life. And when you use the promo code MIIC until June, you'll get 10% off all your purchases. That's momisincontrol.com/big life, promo code MIIC.